Hi, welcome back to the MindBody Project. My name is Eldine Thorne. We are going to answer your questions today. Today's one, anxiety again. You guys are searching a lot for anxiety. So here's the question today. It is, I get super dizzy when my anxiety flares up. What can I do? I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of what anxiety is, because what is being described at me is not how the MindBody Project sees anxiety. And there's a reason why 9 out of 10 people struggle or still have the problem when they go through the mental health services. There's a reason why, and I'm going to explain now. So the first thing, anxiety. So what happens is there's the situation. Okay, so the event, whatever the event is. Okay. Now, this can be an actual event that's come up, or you may imagine it, an event. Okay, something that's come up, or some person you've got to see, or an exam you've got to do, or a test you've got to do, or a group of people that you've got to hang around with that you don't really get on with. Whatever it is, there's an event, a situation, which you then picture. So you have a trigger. It may even be something that someone says, or a tone of voice for like a manager comes in the room and you hear the tone of voice and it causes an anxiety. Yeah. So whatever it is, you're going to have a trigger. Now, your triggers are going to be, as I've just mentioned, you see something, you hear something, or especially a tone of voice. Yeah. Or some sort of sound where it triggers all of this off. It may be a touch, someone touched you or brushed you or whatever, or tapped you on the shoulder. It may be a smell. And I'll give you an example. When I went to Cuba, and I used a specific shower gel in Cuba. And then every time I smelt that same shower gel, all of a sudden a picture come back of a really good time in Cuba. Yeah, so that's an example of this, of a trigger. Or something taste. Okay, so all those are going to be your triggers. It's not usually taste or smell. It's usually something you see or hear. Yeah, but those are your triggers. It's going to be something that's what's going to be going on. Okay. So once that happens, so you see the thing, and then what that's going to do is affect your triad, the triad of emotions. So the triad of anxiety. So this is where it affects your physiology, language. So this is internal language. You're saying things to yourself really, really quickly or really, really loud. Come on, Aldi, you can do it. Come on, you can do it. Affects your breathing. Usually affects your breathing. And your focus, which is their pictures. Okay, pictures you're focusing on something. Right. So that's how you get a triad, and it does it perfectly. This is why I don't say anxiety is a disorder. Anxiety is an outcome from doing specific things in a specific way. Okay. And that gives you the state of anxiety. All of that has to happen for you to get to the state of anxiety. Okay. Which is a state. Once you are in this state, then you have access to 3 behaviors. 3. You are going to fight people. You're going to try and run away, or you're going to freeze. So when you say you get super dizzy, let's take to the triad of anxiety for a second. That is where this comes in. So you're super dizzy because what happens is when you have fear, then your blood all goes to the organs that are going to be used for either fighting, flight, or freezing. Yeah, so if you try and do something in an anxiety state, it's going to be extremely difficult because you do not have access to those neurons in the brain because you're in the wrong state. Okay. So why am I struggling with anxiety still? So this is the difference between what the MindBody Project does and what the mental health services do. Okay. And there's a reason why, I'll explain in a second. So the situation comes up, construct situation. What the MindBody Project does is those 3 at the top. So situation, trigger, and that triad. I'm going to come in and actually use what we call NLP high performance games. I'm going to take control of the physiology, language, and focus deliberately. And what I'm going to do is make a game so the game gets harder and harder and harder and harder to the point where all of your brain is actually working. Because with an anxiety state, you've only got a little bit of your brain working. That's why you don't have access to all of your behaviors. Yeah, you only have access to 3 behaviors when you're in an anxiety state. But what I'm doing is I'm deliberately creating what we call a high performance state so that you have access to all of your brain's powers and your unlimited behaviors for a specific situation that you're going to be in. Okay, so that's where the mind body project comes in. It comes in at trigger. We deal with the trigger and we deal with the triad. So I create the state, yeah, by using these games. And then what I do is I get the brain to focus on the situation. So whilst I'm in a high performance state, then I tell the brain, right, I want this state for this situation. Yeah, rather than the anxiety state, I want this high performance state for this situation. Okay, through a technique, which is easier to do than for me to talk about. So that's what I'm doing. Now, the problem with what the health services are doing, mental health services are doing, they need to measure everything. And it's easier to measure behaviors than it is states. Okay, so it's easier to measure the behaviors because that's what you're doing. So I spoke to an NHS commissioner about this and I said, what I do, and they said, we can't do that because we have to measure things, because we have to justify where all funding goes. So it has to be done that way. That is a flaw of the mental health system. Okay, because 9 out of 10 people, when you do all the take into account all the relapse and what goes on, 9 out of 10 people still have the problem a year later. Okay, that's the problem. So the results from this is when you do an intervention on anxiety with mental health services, what happens is that they do rather than dealing with the trigger, what they are doing is saying, when you get anxious, then do whatever, breathing, then talk about it, then go for a walk, listen to music, whatever it is. Yeah. And these things, so you're treating the symptoms. But this still works. It still works at the time. But because you're not dealing with the trigger, then you have to do this over and over and over and over again. So the trigger goes off, you get into the anxiety state, then you do something. Yeah, then you calm down, and then you go on, then there's a new situation, and then the trigger goes off, you get anxiety state, and then you do something. Yeah, so you're treating the symptoms by doing this way. And the problem is with that, you have to keep doing that forever. Yeah, so even though you can measure it, and this is why mental health services like this, even though you can measure it, the problem is you're going to have to do this for the rest of your life. So that is the problem, because when you're in an anxiety state, you only have a small access to small areas of the brain. You don't have access to all your brain. So you can't do the behaviors. When you're training, when you're doing these behaviors, you're still anxious. So it makes it difficult to do those behaviors because you're in anxiety state. It's really, really difficult because you're in the wrong state to do the behaviors that you're trying to get a person to learn. Okay. And this person, so when you do the mental health services, you're going to struggle to access any new behaviors that you learn because you're in the wrong state. You have to be in the right state. All learning is state dependent. You can learn something. You can go to one of these groups that they do, the CBT groups or whatever the groups are, and you can learn everything you want to learn, and you can get it all. But then when it comes to the situation and the anxiety kicks in, then you're going to forget everything because your brain is gone to fight, flight, or freeze. So you can't even use the information that you've learned because you're in the wrong state. Okay, that's the problem with that. Now, with the Mind Body project, what I do is, because I'm tackling the trigger, because what I've done is I've created a high performance state and told the brain, hey, use this high performance state in this situation. So I've got all access to the brain, all unlimited behaviors, all everything, called the know nothing, know everything state. Yeah, high performance state. Because I have access to everything, I can let the brain do what I do. You can have multiple new behaviors, and your unconscious mind knows already how to solve the problem. It already knows how to behave. And that's the thing. It's not that you do not know how to behave. It's not that you need to learn any new skills necessarily. It's just that you're in the wrong state, in the wrong situation. That is it. My job when clients come to me is not to solve their problem. It's not to solve your problem. My job is to get you in the right state to solve your own problem. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm here to do. This is easy to do. It's far easier than I've just explained to you. It's far easier to do. Yeah, it takes 30 minutes to do this. Okay. So you have access to all the brain and unlimited behaviors at the choice of the unconscious mind. The worst thing you can do is say, how would you like to feel instead? Because your conscious mind doesn't know nothing. It doesn't know. Yeah, your conscious mind is like this fist here. Yeah, this fist. Now just think about the nearest city that you're in, the size of that city. That's your unconscious mind's power. Which are you going to use to solve the problem? Because your unconscious mind already knows what to do. You're just in the wrong state. Get in the right state, and then the problem's gone, because you then have access to all of your behaviors. Okay, that's all we're doing here. That's what's going to help with this dizzy stuff. If we take care of the triggers, then all of the rest of it goes away. All the other behaviors, all the heart palpitations, all the shivering, all the whatever it is, all of that goes away once you deal with the trigger and the triad of anxiety.